quit playing yourself.
Hey yo, quit playing.
Hey.
Quit playing yourself.
RadioUTD.
Opinions expressed on Radio UTD are those of the individual expressing them and are not necessarily those of the University Administration, the Board of Regents of the University of Texas System, or of the operating board of the radio station.
Good morning and welcome to the Mercury Morning News, a podcast by students for students to help get your week started. We hope you enjoy.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mercury Morning News. I'm Kristina Vasquez. I'm from radio. And I'm 4 people with me today. Oh my God, a whole little lineup going on. All right. So first, from Mercury, we have...
I'm Maria Shaikh, and I am the copy editor with the Mercury.
All right. And then from UTD-TV, we have...
Emily Kuhl. I'm the station manager of UTD-TV.
And then we have... Oh my God.
I'm Fatimah Azeem. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Mercury.
And hello, I'm Averion. I am the distribution manager for the Mercury and for AMP.
All right, look, we have a whole little lineup today, and we're talking about so many cool things. All right, do you guys want to get started first?
Yeah, sure. So, as you guys might have seen on Instagram socials, we're here today to talk about the cat investigation. I actually want to let Andre start off because he's the one who discovered this initially, and then we investigated it from there.
So when we found out about this story, we were in the middle of pitch, and just an hour before we began the whole thing, I was just looking through a bunch of keywords on Google saying, is there anything interesting happening around campus? And usually keywords will show up on like other newspapers, stuff like that. And I can't remember the name of the publication, but they made an announcement about a student being arrested, and their keyword was, of course, UT Dallas. So we're like, we should probably look into that. So we caught on to that, and once we got wind, I think we put up a news story later that night or the day after, and then everything blew up. Fox News got on it. I think CBS got on it. I don't know if Dallas Morning News jumped on it, but a lot of people... They didn't.
They should have.
They definitely
That's
should have.
in our area, Fox News and everybody else. But
when was this?
This was a fraud. We uploaded it Saturday, and this was... I can't remember the specific date.
It was a bit more than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So once we got the initial story up, we basically looked through the internet as much as we could. We tried contacting sources immediately, and we just published the information we knew right off the bat based off what sources we could find. And from there, we kind of just went down a rabbit hole. Fatimah and I began working on it immediately. And Fatimah, what was like your process for the first half of it?
Well, before we get to my process, Andre and Jack did a really great job gathering the initial information from, I believe there was like one really vague news article out there that Andre had discovered at that pitch date. You want to add something, Andre?
Yeah, so by the way, Jack is our news editor at the Mercury, but we had found the original piece. It was pretty vague, and there wasn't exactly correct information. We just knew they had the general idea of what happened. So they knew about, for example, like they didn't know who the cat owner was. They didn't know the actual method. They just knew the trial and what happened. So they explained that information. But that let us reach out to different people and find them from there. So we ended up later on, kind of jumping ahead, we ended up finding the original cat owner. We ended up finding the primary investigator, the veterinary the veteran, the forensics veteran, and we ended up finding, of course, the organization that helped the owner through the whole situation. And I think the first thing we did is we popped on LinkedIn to try and get in contact with him. And the person who abused the cats, I can't remember his name right now, Kuhl, I think, we looked on his LinkedIn, and it was like gone within 2 days. Like all his socials were deleted, and we're like, oh, we should have taken screenshots and everything. It was just gone.
Have the receipts.
I know. we started taking receipts after that. We got everything.
We did have some receipts though. Like we were able to figure out from his LinkedIn initially on the first weekend that the story came out that he worked in a lab on campus and that he worked in the testing center. I remember seeing a lot of comments on our Instagram page about how is he employed in the testing center, and we did try to reach out to the testing center multiple times. We didn't get a response on that.
So actually we did get a response. It was just after we published the final report.
Really?
And I'm supposed to double check with them, but based off the policies that are in their conduct book, basically, they're supposed to check background information when they're notified of it. So if they were never notified, they couldn't have done it. And even then, they believe in the process of innocent until proven guilty. He hadn't gone on trial until later. However, they do take into consideration charges, so even arrests would count. So it's a decision between them, and we don't know what decision they decided to go through with if they found out about the incident. And there's a good chance they didn't. Like, most people didn't know this happened, and even then, when some people did, they've only just now spoken out against it.
Okay.
Yeah, but he was employed after.
Yeah, afterwards. So he was arrested October 21st, I believe, in 2021, and he was set for bail for $50,000, and he got out. We don't know who paid his bail, and from there he went back to his employment as a researcher, as a UTD proctor. And there seemed like no actual consequences for that happening. Again, it could have been a process of, innocent until proven guilty. But until we knew, so we didn't fully know the background on that. UTD hasn't been super responsive on that, understandably. But we tried to figure out as much as we could, given everything. It sounds like he also had something else going on. Like we ended up finding he had a wedding coming up, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the initial pieces of information that Andre.
Tech difficulties right here, but it's okay. We're working on it.
It's okay. I'll just hold the microphone for now.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of funny. But one of the initial pieces of information we had found on Kuhl was that he had either a fiance or a wife, because we found his wedding registry page, but it had been taken down a few days before we found it. So we were also trying to contact his wife, ex-wife, fiance, whatever kind of classification this person would have, and we did find her later on, actually. We found her phone number online. I called her and she immediately declined for comment. Unfortunate, because we didn't get to include any for comment in the story, but we did mention that she had declined comment. And another big thing we were trying to do, of course, was to talk to Kuhl directly. We found out that he's being held in Hunt County Hunt County Detention Center, we left a couple voicemails for him. We filled up his calling card with some money in case he wanted to respond to our voicemails, but we didn't get anything from him. If we had gotten a response, the plan would have been to visit him in prison, because they allow for 20-minute visitations twice a week, and then ask him a few questions there, but we didn't get any response from him. So really the big thing for us was two things. Number one, to get that court trial video or police report from Hunt County Police Department, because that would have included a lot of the details that we needed to fill in these gaps with the story. Like, we know all these vague facts that's already published online, such as he went to prison, his trial was on this date, here's the crime he committed, but in very vague terms. And then the other thing was to get some comment from Catherine herself, which was the owner of the cats at the time, and we didn't know. It was like a slow process, kind of figuring out who the owner was and then contacting her finally. It was pretty incredible, actually. So in our initial report, we mentioned her as an unnamed source. We were trying really hard to find out who she was. We couldn't really find anything. And then Andre discovered, he was doing some deep digging. Do you want to talk about that, Andre?
Sure, yeah. So I was doing some deep digging, like Fatimah said. And at first, the name popped up, and we weren't sure if it was the right name, so we kept looking. And after we confirmed, I think we found the initial name, and then within a few days, another publication, who they became basically the foundation for a lot of other news reports on this case. They basically confirmed the name we had suspected, and later This is a weird thought. We didn't think to look on Instagram until like 2 days before publication.
Oh my god, I
We
remember
had
that.
looked on Instagram, but we couldn't find the name though, because yeah, I had looked on Instagram and Jack had too, but so Catherine's name was actually spelled wrong in all of the news reports that came out. So we were able to actually find her phone number online in advance, but we didn't realize it was her because the spelling of the name was wrong. We were following what the other news reports had said because we didn't have a police report to cross-reference it by. So it was a very like tricky situation, kind of navigating all of that. And then the question became, we want to make sure our news report is really robust. So we had the breaking news report, and we've promised people that we're going to have a full report on September 18th. The stakes are really high. And then we want to make sure we do our due diligence with this case. Something that kind of irritates me with breaking news cases is that we don't often get a follow-up on those. And that makes sense for brevity. Like, you want to know who the perpetrator of the crime was, what they did exactly, and then what action is being taken against them, but we don't often hear about like what's going on with the victim or what the aftermath is for the victim, or having that really deep follow-up, which is why it was really important for us to find Catherine and really hear her story. Her story would have contextualized everything really fully. Going back, we weren't able to get the police report, so I had put in a request about 2.5 weeks ago, and Hunt County didn't end up processing that until a week later.
Didn't forget or something? I think we talked about this in the office. So this entire time, because we knew this was going to be a very big thing, once we made the initial post, that became one of our biggest stories of the year. So we wanted to find information as quickly as we could. But like the Hunt County wasn't responding to us. Of course, Kuhl wasn't responding to us. Testing Center wasn't responding to us. We got responses from the initial primary investigator, and they gave us a lot of good details that helped us solidify the rest of the path, along with a lot of extra gruesome details we won't go into. But we also got to talk with and then once we found all the information, it was just a waiting game. If we had all the information present from the start, we could have gotten this done within like a few hours. But we had to wait maybe a week just to get everything in. And that wasn't even us like, oh, we don't know where to look. It's just like, it just wasn't coming in.
Yeah, and that goes back to having a lot of persistence, right? Like with investigative journalism, the point is that all of the information isn't in front of you, and you have to work really hard at it. Like, honestly, it feels as if we worked at this for a whole month. Yeah. But it was only 2 weeks actually, and we worked at it every single day, trying to get police reports, trying to get trial transcripts, which interestingly enough, the trial transcripts were made, but we couldn't have access to those because Kuhl is appealing the case. Yep. So it's an ongoing case, so the court reporter wouldn't release those to us, or they can't release those to us until December when the appeals part of the case is closed, so we weren't able to get that. It was very interesting how we ended up finding Catherine. So kind of funny, but I was talking to our journalism advisor, and we were talking about different ways we want to present the story, because there's a few different ways we can go with it. We have, at this point, it's Thursday. Yeah. Our deadline is literally tomorrow night, and we don't have any comment from this person, and we still have kind of these vague facts. And we're discussing, like, how are we going to present this information on the front page? The only photo that we have is of Kuhl. And what message are we going to send if we put his photo on the front and make it, like, really big? And we just don't have any photos of, like, the victims, aka the cats, anything. Like, what does that send? And we're trying to get these photos of the cat that survived, essentially. I send a message in the group chat about how, hey, if we have these photos, the front page would go from failing to A++. And I kid you not, seconds later, Andre found the Instagram page of Catherine. Like, I don't know, the motivation or the coincidence.
I was literally walking back from the gym, and I'm like, you know what? I wonder if they have a cat page. And I just typed in the page, like, Mango. I'm like, and then, like, it hit the jackpot. And once we found Mango's Instagram page, I sent it to the chat, and it's like the office went on fire. We just all got to work immediately, and it was like, it was so bad. I mean, it was great, but it was so bad. I'm like, oh, I have to go back to the office now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, again, like, this case is really important, so we were all willing to just, like, get back to work and stuff. And this was, like, a huge breakthrough for us, because now that's, like, the missing piece of the puzzle that we have in our hand. So, again, Andre found Catherine's social media page. We reached out to her on there. We didn't get a response, so the next day, I decided to call Catherine, and she was very open to speaking. Like within a few seconds, she answered the phone, and we had a really great conversation about just everything. She was very open to answering all of our questions. I got to hear her story, which is very humbling, and we discussed a lot of that in the article. Catherine, she's still staying in the original residence that she was in when the crime occurred, but she's in she's in a different room right now because she can't really handle staying in the same room that the crime had occurred in. Do we have to wrap it up? I see.
No, you got 2 minutes. You're fine.
Okay, I have 2 minutes. Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to talk forever, and then we have an ad break right now.
No, you're fine. And then even if we can restart after the break. We're good.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. So she's staying in a different room, but still in the same residence. It was interesting because we initially thought that Kuhl and her were neighbors. We didn't find out about the ex thing until later on, but they're not neighbors. So she was staying in Quinlan, he was staying in Richardson. And then they were seeing each other for a brief period of time. She would give him rides to her residence, and then, it was around this time that she would see these injuries popping up on her 2 cats, Mango and Nimbus, and, very mysterious. Nothing like this has happened before, and only after Kuhl has stayed at the house. And there were a few different incidents that had popped up that made her kind of suspicious. Number one, as was mentioned in the story, is that Mango's paw was broken, and the explanation that she got when she returned home and saw that there's this really bad injury on her cat was that he just fell out of a window, but this window that he supposedly fell out of was sealed, and her cat is a very cautious one, so that seemed quite suspicious to her. And there were 2 options for Mango. Like, he could either have his leg amputated or have this very, very expensive surgery, and money was already tight. So unfortunately, we had to go with the amputated kind of route with that. And then some other things occurred after that. Kuhl had clipped the cat's nails, like very short, painfully short. And clipping cat's nails is already a very painful procedure. And he had clipped it to the point where you could not even really tell that there were nails on the cat, and he did that because they had been scratching him.
All right. Yeah. So okay,
we'll continue this.
We're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna reconnect this after. This was Mercury Morning News. Thank you.
Live from the Mercury newspaper at the University of Texas at Dallas, it's September 24th. I'm Andre Averion. Running from August to November, the Millennium Fellowship, which is an international leadership program sponsored by the United Nations Academic Impact, accepts 9 fellows from UTD in the hopes to pursue projects supporting sustainability. Starting the project back in February, the UTD fellows are currently working on a data science-based carbon accounting project related to SDG Goal 12, which aims to ensure sustainability consumption and protection patterns in ways that are environmentally friendly and economically feasible in the long run. The upcoming Athenaeum, which is being constructed as a museum neighboring the Naveen Jindal School of Management, is set to be completed April 14th of next year. The 56,407 square foot museum will host collections from the Crow Museum of Asian Art in Dallas, and has been designed by Morphus Architects, the same firm that designed the famous Perot Science Museum in Dallas. According to an architect, the focus of the 2-story museum, made mostly of concrete and steel, is to provide a place for students to experience art, socialize in community building spaces, and attend events both professionally and academically. As of September 16th, General Attorney of Texas, Ken Paxton, who represents Collin County in which UTD resides in, was acquitted of impeachment for his abuse of office, bribery, and obstruction of justice in 16 articles. Since the trial, Paxton has described the act as a wasteful and destructive political theater. After the trial costed him nearly $4 million, and has since discussed plans to seek retribution against Republicans who voted against him, including the names of some Collin County representatives. The trial has caused turmoil in Austin between senators. As it was revealed, several Republicans that were going to vote against Paxton retracted their vote last minute due to peer pressure or fear of losing the next race for their position. Paxton has returned to office as a general attorney, but is being investigated by the FBI for security fraud charges and other cases of obstructing justice prior to this trial. This week in the UTD fall athletics season has been met with overwhelming success. In the first 7 games of the women's soccer season so far, not a single team has been able to score against the Comets, leading to a 6-game win streak that was only recently broken with a tie game last Friday against the East Texas Baptist. So far, the Comets rank number 2 for offense and defense in the American Southwestern Conference. The men's soccer team, meanwhile, is following up with an impressive home game win against the University of Dallas, evening up their overall score from last week's victory and tie. However, after suffering an 8-game lose streak, the women's volleyball team won their first game this season against Sul Ross State. And the women's tennis team is currently in a match at the ITA Southwestern Regionals, which are expected to have them advance to the finals. Currently, the Mercury is investigating why enrollment has dropped by nearly 1,000 students, with many sources pointing towards the bursar's office, which has yet to return to campus since their temporary move to online at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, the Naveen Jindal School of Business was recently ranked as the number 10 or in the top 10 business schools in the U.S. Meanwhile, the university was ranked number 1 for public schools in DFW, number 3 in public schools for Texas overall, and was the number 3 public school for veterans. This has been the latest from the Mercury News. Now back to our live program at Radio UTD, the Mercury Morning News.
All right, hello, we're back. This is the Mercury Morning News on Radio UTD. You can follow Radio UTD on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at Radio UTD. And the Mercury, I believe, at the Mercury UT Dallas or something like that.
Mercury.
We're the UTDmercury.com. That's also our Instagram handle, and yeah.
All right, cool. So just to recap, we're talking about the cat abuse case investigation with we have Andre, Fatimah, Emily, and Maria, who are all here together to discuss this.
Yes.
And me, Kristina, I'm your host.
Yeah.
And to kind of recap on what we're talking about, since we got a comment saying, like, what are they going on about?
Someone's parent, thank you.
So basically, there was a UTD graduate student named Kuhl who went to prison for 6.5 years for 2 counts of animal abuse. One against Mango, who got his left paw amputated, his left leg, and then the other one, Nimbus, who was humanely euthanized for several unbelievable injuries and some disturbing acts on behalf of Koali's part. So that's kind of what we're getting at, and what we were previously talking about is, of course, our investigative process, and now we're talking about what Fatimah will explain what the phone call was like with the cat owner.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the recap, Andre. Yeah, so before the break, I was talking about Catherine. So Catherine is the owner of Mango and Nimbus, and her interactions with Kuali. They were seeing each other during the time that this had happened, which is how Kuali had access to her home and the cats. So previously I had talked about some suspicious cases with the cats that Catherine had kind of discovered, and then that was all leading up to, I believe it was in September that the big incident occurred, or this terrible incident occurred. Catherine had been visiting her son. She came home and she found Nimbus in a really terrible state. When she had talked to the police, they actually thought that he had been hit by a car because that was the horrible state that he was in. And she had installed some nanny cameras before this time just because she had noticed these weird things, these weird injuries showing up with her cat. And when she did go on the nanny cam footage, she found Kuali torturing Nimbus for 5 hours straight in various ways. I will save the details. And then, obviously this was very horrible, and Catherine she had to have so much patience because the police were not able to arrest him until days later. Actually, I believe it was almost a week later.
They put out the warrant, but once they did, so the primary investigator put out the warrant, and I got to meet with her, and she described this as probably what was the worst case she had ever seen in her career, and that holds up even today, and this has been 2 years since. And when she described and read out the report to me on what happened, I'll tell you, my stomach turned upside down. But when she put out the report, the arrest warrant, it took, I think, UTD police like a few days to actually find him, and he was arrested in the middle of class on campus. But you were saying, Fatimah?
Yeah, so she did have to wait a bit for the police to actually come. Thank you for that description too, Andre. Same here. It really affected me for a while after hearing that. And then just to imagine that she had to watch that for 5 hours, because she has to record the footage in order to give it as evidence to the police. And when the police arrived and she showed them the footage, they said, if we had seen this when you called us initially, we would have arrested him on the spot immediately. Like, it was that bad. And they had, as you mentioned, a warrant was put out for his arrest immediately, and then he was taken out of class and put in jail. I believe it was Hunt County jail, and he was released on a $50,000 bond. He didn't pay the full bond. That's only like a certain percentage of bond that you pay to get out. And then was able to continue employment at UTD, as you mentioned, Andre, until his trial this year. It's very interesting because we didn't hear anything about this 2 years ago. Not that when it comes to criminals on campus, UTD doesn't necessarily need to make that public to people. But to not have heard like any other news stations kind of report on that was very interesting to hear. But yes, Catherine, lovely lady, she gave me all the details of this. And then of course the main thing was, I want to know like how she's doing and how Mango is doing. And Mango is doing a lot better now, actually. As you can imagine, it took a lot to recover from this, and they still haven't made a full recovery, especially with the trial just happening and having to like relive parts of what happened and hear the testimony from Kuhl and his wife there. It was very difficult. But Catherine has she adopted 2 other cats, Gracie and Toot. Gracie is also an amputee. Catherine wanted to make sure that Mango had another playmate, somebody who could kind of understand the situation he was in, also having an amputated leg. And she described Mango as a very, like, returning to his silly, lovable kitty ways. But he still, after experiencing what he did, will exhibit these signs of trauma, like jumping or being kind of startled if you try to pet him out of nowhere. But she described him overall as kind of a dog. Like, you can play fetch with Mango. Like, you can yeah, like if you throw a ball, he'll go and get it. He bounced back to his ways. And again, it was very humbling listening to Catherine's story. She described it as she's been waiting kind of for somebody to call her about this story and to have the full situation kind of heard on her side. So I'm very glad that we decided to call her and to get this information, and that really pulled everything together, because now we can focus on the victims of the story. We can kind of end the story off on a note of hope, on a note of we've talked about this terrible thing, but here's what's going on with the victim now, and here's how they're moving forward, which is exactly what we wanted to do, to send that message across. And then Catherine sends a lot of photos of her cats to work with, which we put on the front page. That for anybody that's a UTD student and has seen the newspaper, that really large photo of Mango on the front is him after his surgery. And you can actually see the nub where his leg used to be, but is not anymore, of course, because he was amputated. And then we did post a recovery timeline for Mango, because Catherine actually documented the abuse that he was going through. She didn't know at the time that it was abuse, but she documented kind of when he supposedly jumped off of a 2nd-story building, which is not what happened, when he had to have surgery for that, and then his recovery and him kind of playing with some of his newer cats. Did you want to add anything else?
And if you want to read the latest story, you can do so online on our website, utdmercury.com. If you haven't been able to catch the paper yet, you can catch it online there. And here you can actually see the timeline, more processes, and that's basically the gist from there.
And yeah, again, this was probably one of the most rewarding pieces that I've worked on personally. I'm sure Andre would agree too, just because of how much detail we were able to get out of it. And that ending of the story mattered a lot. The focusing on the future and the victims and not just giving all of the spotlight to Kuhl mattered a lot. I mean, I was so motivated to work on the piece after we had that interview, and I think we did our due diligence to the best of our ability, and Catherine even asked us to send her some newspapers, so we mailed some to her a couple of days ago. And yeah, it was just been really difficult, honestly, because the content was very heavy and it was very disturbing to hear about what had happened, but really satisfying overall to see the full piece come together, and then to see so many people interact with the post because they find this to be important. I believe we have like 17,000 plus views on the website right now from students and people in the Richardson community.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, okay, I'm not in Mercury, and neither is Emily, but I feel like you can testify,
Yeah.
They were working on this non-stop for like
my
2
gosh,
weeks. It felt like every time I was in here, it'd be like another thing on the cat case. And I was like, oh my god.
They always will have some information. Like, I'll stop by and Fatimah will like grab me and she'll be like, we found something else. I'm like, tell me. I think it's nice working in the office because we always get the news.
Yeah,
like,
immediately.
first.
Just like...
We were out when we were recording, like doing some test shoots for this show. I remember hanging out with Andre, and he was just like Googling all of the stuff, like, you know, FBI level Andre right here.
Literally, we were doing test shoots for this show, and we finished up, and then we go out, and then we're all just sitting there, like all like focused on Andre, focused on the screen, because we're all like invested in what's happening. It was so
and he's like digging into the whole situation around the wedding. He's like, going off. Yeah, no, we are unearthing all of the info. While he's unearthing the info, we're just cheering him on.
That tells you what our office space is like. It's just all gossip. We're like, oh, tell me more.
Speaking of gossip,
Lighter note. We're moving on to a different
heinous
story.
crime still, but on a lighter note. Let me introduce you to the breakout story of this fall that didn't end up featuring the victim as a positive and hopeful story. Nika Nikubin. I'm sure you've all heard of her, but just to recap, she was a former UTD student who, in spring of 2022, was arrested on campus for, she wasn't arrested on campus. She dropped out of school, went to Las Vegas, and she got arrested there for stabbing her blind date and earning herself 2 counts of false imprisonment with a deadly weapon. I believe it was early in August this year where she had her sentencing, and all the charges were basically boiled down to probation. She has to work with a psychiatrist, she has to do community service, but she's not going to jail. Nika Nikubin's story has been a really widely developing one. We honestly happened upon her arrest and her whole court case by accident, but now that we've given her publicity, a whole lot of new things have started to go down, and she has been, honestly, like the lighthearted counterpart to all the cat drama for the past few weeks in the office, especially since her new autobiography is out. Who is Nika Nikubin? A bloody Las Vegas hotel story. The autobio that no one asked for and no one needs to read.
So that's why we did it for you.
Yes.
Wattpad-esque 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could even describe this cover to you.
Everybody please remember FCC rules while we're talking about this. Also, small note, promo time. After this, we have the Social Disconnect with Elsa from 11-12. That's just after this. You can listen to her talk about, I believe, social issues and like talking to people and various different things.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, I know.
We're excited.
Wonderful.
Stay tuned.
Well,
listen, yeah.
Yes, stay tuned. As for this autobiography, I'll give a brief rundown here and then I'll give my thoughts on it. I was the one assigned to read this thing and then write my opinion on it, and boy do I have opinions. Starting off with the cover, we are already not doing well. This thing is grayscale. Imagine like Stephanie Meyer's Twilight, right? Yeah. Front and center is the blindfold she used on her victim. Not a good look. And this entire thing is typeset like a really bad middle school YA book, like the huge font, insanely huge spaces between paragraphs. You know this girl and her editor are trying to milk every page they can out of this to jack up the price. It's very funny. This book starts out with like a chronological retelling of her life, growing up in Tehran, Iran as a very young girl, then growing up in small town Texas, and then the effects that like her low self-esteem and her mental health issues have had on her, leading her to a manic episode where she basically goes to the Las Vegas Strip, parties hard, and ends up committing this crime. Now, I do feel for Nika. I do think she was mentally unstable during this time, and that she deserves our sympathy as someone who, has been a victim of like the mental health crisis in America. But at the same time, I find myself struggling to be too sympathetic towards her, because this book has so many problems. I've compiled a list here to touch on the really big ones.
That's our copy editor.
yeah. I have to be meticulous about it. Firstly, I must expose the nature of this book. Pretty much ever since Nika went viral for the crime she committed and for her sentencing, she's been trying to profit off of it every way she can. She's been making some really shady music videos that are kind of in the gray area of copyright infringement and trying to make bank off of that. And this autobiography seems to be, another stepping stone in her mad chase for fame that she's trying to get out of this experience of hers. She allegedly wrote this book for people with mental health issues, but that's not what it comes across as at all. This entire book is an incredibly self-centered experience where she just talks about herself, and keeps trying to justify what she did through all kinds of subtle means, through all kinds of lies of omission. It's very fascinating. This book, taken as a microcosm of her psychology, this thing needs to be submitted to her psychiatrist, like her court-ordered psychiatrist for real. It's amazing how you can be the perpetrator of a crime and still have this big of a victim complex. Multiple times in this book, Nika says, and I quote, "I'm not the victim here. Bestie, nobody said you were." Like, it's not good. The way she speaks about this whole event is just denying any kind of responsibility. At one point in the book, she says, and I quote, "Well, I suppose this wasn't some petty crime." Girl, you suppose? This was a felony. You have 2 felonies. You are in jail.
Attempted murder goes crazy.
Yeah.
When this story first broke last year, for the record, all this happened last year, I believe. Last school year, my bad. It was like spring 2023. When this story first broke, I was like, oh my god. You guys, just shocking stuff.
I met her like
my condolences.
Yeah, thank you. I've been needing that. But we, because we were doing boothing, I think all of student media was doing like a boothing event, and this girl came up and said, "Hey, you can pay for me to sing for your TV show." And it's like, okay. And she hands me a flyer where she looks like she's like painted in like a nice dress, like in front of a sports car, like she's at a Honda dealership.
We have it on the wall right here.
Yeah,
just for the record.
Is on the wall.
Yeah, it's horrendous. And she's just like, I'm like, okay, thank you. And then she just starts talking about like, yeah, they paid me to sing at like charity events, and I'm like, okay. And then I meet with my boss, and then he's like, I'm like, yeah, this weird girl came up to me, and she's like, oh yeah, she stabbed somebody. I'm like, thanks for telling me beforehand.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate that warning, but I think because we've mentioned that like a family member works at the university, and she was supposed to be like with him at all times or something. Was that it? But she broke that, and she was going around campus basically, and that's when I met her, perhaps.
It was more so that she was supposed to, so she was on house arrest, and there's a certain curfew that she's supposed to meet. The university was not aware that she was on campus, or else it's implied that they would have just not allowed her to be on campus, because she would stay after that curfew sometimes. And then university officials likely wouldn't have just wanted her on campus without reviewing the case, because once they did find out, then she did get banned from UT Dallas, and she wasn't allowed to come here regardless of if she met the 6 p.m. curfew or not. I believe at one point there was a hearing because she had broken her curfew to film her Spaceman music video, which is the music video that...
Allegedly, according to her autobiography, whoever's in charge of her curfew had signed off on this. But, I mean, I really don't feel like this is what you should be doing with your probation time, respectfully.
I have a question for Maria, actually. Do you think that this book could be potentially helpful for any demographic of people?
No.
Or just harmful?
If you're the demographic of people who likes to read really bad books and laugh at how bad they are, this book will do you so much good. But if you're trying to understand the details of this case, don't read this. I truly do believe half of this is a fabrication. A lot of what she says in this book does not line up with what she said during the trial. During the trial, she consistently claims to have no recollection of what happened. During this book, she spends pages upon pages constructing this elaborate scene where she's hallucinating herself as, quote, Selma Hayek with a snake around her shoulders, playing a part in some movie as she goes to stab this guy. Which, pardon me for doubting the validity of this, but this is not what you said under oath, so either we need a retrial or we need to burn this book, bestie.
Isn't the movie Dawn to Dusk or something?
I'm not sure. I don't watch those movies, but I wouldn't trust her recollection of the movie either. This girl was really going through it trying to write this. This book, and let me just emphasize for the audience here, this book has not been through any round of editing. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a copy editor and I will notice every hyphen that's out of place. This book is riddled with typos, incomprehensible sentences, paragraphs less coherent than what a 7th grader high off their mind would write. Sorry, does that break FCC rules?
Well, it's fine. It
I feel like that's on track for her character, though.
Yeah,
seems,
of course.
Yeah.
But what I really
In-game.
but what I really can't get over with this book, if there's one takeaway you must take away, besides how poorly edited, hastily constructed, money grabbing of a venture this is how much she refuses to take responsibility for anything. She constantly justifies what she was doing under the name of depression or drinking too much or this or that. Even when she's talking about her decision to stab the guy, which again, we don't know how much of this is true because when she was testifying, she doesn't seem to have remembered this at all. She talks about how he had asked to be dominated, how he had asked for pain, as if that somehow half justifies what she did. And throughout the book, she talks about how this experience affected her, how it affected her to have committed this crime and to be perceived this way, and how it felt to be quote-unquote judged. Bestie, you committed 2 felonies. I think if people are judging you, that's a little bit okay. I don't think you've earned the right to complain when you literally almost killed this guy, permanently disfigured him, and have effectively put his life on hold while he has to go to all of your sentencings and trials. Please don't buy this book. Please don't support Nika Nikubin and give her the idea that exploiting her victim for cash and views is a good idea. Please don't give her the impression that we want to hear more from her, because all she's going to do is embellish this story even further and try and make a name for herself in the name of helping people with mental health. Girl, this book made my mental health worse. You are not doing any favors for people with mental health struggles. You do not speak to healing. You do not speak to progress or any of these things. All you do is talk about yourself in the most infuriating, self-victimizing way, and most of us just don't need that energy in our lives, okay? That will be the gist of my review of Who is Nika Nikubin, a bloody Las Vegas hotel story. For more refined thoughts, please catch the upcoming cycle of the Mercury. I will be writing a full-fledged review in the Life and Arts section, and I cannot wait to tear into it there.
I cannot wait to read your review, Maria.
Yeah.
This just now adds on to one of the many cryptics of UTD.
Yeah. I also feel like, okay, not to be like, how did no one be like, girl? She
Where is everyone who's supposed to be intervening with her right now?
Okay,
Who let her do this?
Like, genuinely, I feel like it's very obvious that, like, she's going through things. It has been, like like manic episode then, manic episode now to a certain extent.
Well, and also like whoever's representing her,
right?
Like,
I feel
they
like
can't look at this and be like, this does not make you look good, like at all.
Her
I
PR
know,
team
her-
must be fuming.
Literally,
I
I'm
spoke with her
saying.
PR team before our follow-up article on August 21st came out, and her PR manager was telling me that the book was good. She was recommending that we read it. She said it's simple. It explains
This
the
book
story.
means you need a retrial.
I have a guess that the PR team is actually her, just under a different name. That's
So funny.
It
It's
is-
on a trench coat and like
Yeah,
some
exactly.
stepping stools.
It is confirmed to be someone else. So what was supposed to happen is I was going to have an interview with Nika for our follow-up story on what happened at her trial, her getting sentenced to the 36 months of probation. She was not able to interview with me formally because she had some sort of contract with another network, I believe the New York Post, and that story had to come out first before she could interview with us, but we still needed to put out her story. So we just got a few comments from her, and then we used the trial video for a follow-up. And the PR team was actually upset after our article came out. They said that this objective article will follow Nika, and if you read her book, you'll see that the case is actually very simple and it explains what happened, and you'll have a lot of sympathy for her. And then to hear Maria's review of the book, kind of, it puts things into perspective. Very PR.
There are so many factual and historical problems with this book. Like, even down to the title, A Bloody Las Vegas Hotel Story. I mean, the hotel wasn't in Las Vegas. It was on the outskirts. It was outside the city limits of Las Vegas. This
start off
entire
with the
thing is
first line.
embellished in all of these tiny little ways, all these lies of omission. Half the book she spends talking about attending Berkeley. She called it Berkeley. No, not UC Berkeley. We're talking about Berkeley Community College, everyone. She's just selectively lying to make herself look better. And it's not even a lie, because she goes out and admits it at one point, but the way she phrases everything is so insidious. It's honestly not good for you to try and keep track of all of the little lies of omission and all of the slight ways she tries to turn you to her side. It's a propaganda piece is what it is. It's trying to save face. It's trying to make money. It's not objective. We can't use this for any self-respecting journalistic article.
Yeah.
It's a good
That's insane.
Yeah.
No, that's so valid.
I remember just thinking, if we put the article out later, then we could pull quotes from the book. There's nothing.
There's
from
no
the
quotes in the book.
Yeah.
This thing is illegible.
I mean, and I've looked through it as well. Like, every time I come to the office, look what she said.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this has become the Office meme. This book has been trading hands like a bar of gold.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I don't think we can repeat it, but there's a specific line in that book that's just I'm gonna print it somewhere in the office. It's just so infamous. Don't read the book, but if you do, you'll know what we're talking about.
Let me find the page number for you really quick.
It is
Don't read the
strategically
book.
placed on our trash can, just right by the page, the big
Yeah.
trash can, so everyone knows it's there where it belongs, and we can,
That's the only thing I'd put in our paper as a quote. Just that one
Yeah.
line.
That should be our headline.
Just no article attached to it, just that.
Just that. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Hey, some comments. Mercury Crime Division went crazy this week. Somebody said, I want to read the book now. Don't. Somebody said, her dad's a professor. He is.
Oh yes, I should have mentioned that. Her dad is a professor here. That's kind of how she's been related to this. She was banned from campus once she was discovered roaming around here, even though she shouldn't have been due to her curfew. Or
I could have died.
You could have died.
The way you described
What would my
Roman-
For the
boss do without
audience,
me?
the final sentence of page 125 going on to page 126, right before the chapter titled Custody Scene. That is the line that we can't read to you because of FCC recommendations, but it will be on our wall.
Yeah. We're hedging to be cautious. But also other comments. Somebody said the way we wouldn't have known if she hadn't tried to promote her music. Yeah. I feel like the biggest issue here is the whole trying to get money off of the actual crime situation. I feel like it's not good. Yeah.
Yeah, way to exploit your victim more than once. You already drained his blood with your knife, girl, twice, and now you're sucking him even drier. Please.
I wonder if his lawyer is aware of this book.
Yeah,
You
honestly, it's one of
retrial
those
for
things.
civil damages and get your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're out there, Nikobin's unnamed victim out of privacy, because Lord knows your privacy has been thoroughly damaged in this book. If you're out there, if you're listening, get a copy of this book, send it to your lawyer, get in touch with us, we can give you the copy for free. Do something.
Yeah.
Get civil damages, because she owes you for writing this. On God, she owes you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay. We still have a minute 40, so what else do you guys want to talk about? We have other stories
Ooh, a minute
going.
40.
A minute 40.
I had a quick thing to talk about. It's not super big, but I think it's it's big within ATEC. I mean, I feel like
ATEC, who's that?
yeah, exactly.
The Bass School, you mean?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm about to talk about real quick. I feel like if you've been here for a semester or you feel like you've been here for a decade, you know,
Yeah.
ATEC has changed hands with
Like
names.
literally 5 different times.
Yeah.
I've been here a year. It's already changed like 3 different
It's
times.
three times, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like in, like,
Oh. It's at the PSA. Sorry. All right.
RadioUTD.
Students, we are back with Dallas Formula Racing's biannual event, Cars and Comets. There will be a variety of cars, from muscle, Japanese domestic market, and exotic supercars. This will be an event you don't want to miss. The event will be on October 27th, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on the top floor of the parking structure next to ECS West. For more information and to follow Dallas Formula Racing, follow them at Dallas Formula Racing on Instagram. That's at Dallas Formula Racing on Instagram. Get your engine and gear comments, and we'll see you there.
Know you are crazy sometimes, but it's fine by me. Wake just to go to sleep. If you're my angel, this is what you need. I could be a therapist, talking about the places where you'd rather be. Never hear a thing that you're lecturing, but talk about it makes you weak. Staying quiet just for courtesy, but when you come around, arms wide open. Always on my watch, you come in the night, I'll be by your side, my love. Forever, but keep shining on the edge, deep diving. You make me nervous, my teeth grinding. Tell you what, these diamonds don't last forever, but keep shining on the edge, deep diving. You make me nervous, my teeth grinding. Tell you what, these diamonds don't last forever, but keep shining on the edge. Sometimes, but it's fine by me.
Brushing my hair naked, spritz my face with toner.
A lonely patch of useless herb, purple stone horizon, a desperate flower dying of thirst, and I am close behind him. I took the long journey home from iridescent to monochrome. Fill my lungs with water now, sink me into silence. Raise your head above the clouds, or bury it in violence. I took the long journey home from iridescent to monochrome. I learned no lesson, I'm no more wise. We live to suffer and know not why. A false and ancient prophecy told him he was chosen, and now for all the world to see, his rotten corpse upon a bed of withered roses. I took the long journey home from iridescent to monochrome. I learned no lessons, I'm no more wise. We live to suffer and know not why.
For frightful sights and tasty delights, please join the Bass School of Arts, Humanities, and Technology for the Monster Mash. The Monster Mash at the Bass will be hosted on October 31st from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. in the ATEC lobby. For more information, check out @UTD_arts on Instagram.